Welcome to episode 1 of the Ruins of Symbaroum podcast. I'm your host, the RPG Anarchist. When talking about a world, where do you start? I teach English, and part of that English I teach is the spoken word. And every culture has a creation myth. So when we're talking about the ruins of Symbaroum, where do you start? So I guess where I'm going to start is talking about this the center of the world for these folks in this setting is an ancient mystical forest of massive proportions named Davokar. Davokar is the linchpin to this entire setting and could possibly be the savior or the ruin of all of its inhabitants and those on its outskirts. Davokar, as far as its size goes, is concerned, I don't believe it's ever been navigated, or no cartographer has been able to walk its bounds. I've heard rumors and saw maybe some slight suggestions that possibly it's the size of Alaska or possibly the size of Australia. And that's just the forest. On top of that, it is a magnet for everything that is good and everything that is bad. I don't know else how to explain it. So, in the following moments, we'll take a little deeper dive into what Davokar means to the inhabitants of Symbaroum. I had to think of a little bit how impressive it must be for a character to gaze upon Davokar for the first time. And it just occurred to me. I live in South Florida. We have some of the most beautiful beaches on the world. When you go to the beach and you look to the right, all you can see is ocean, as far as you can see to the right. When you look straight ahead, all you can see is the ocean. You cannot see the Bahamas, but all you see is the ocean. And then when you look to the left, it's the same thing. Ocean, ocean, ocean. I imagine that must be what it's like when you're on the outskirts and in the meadowy plains of the exterior before you get to Davokar, and you're on your horseback and you're sitting there and the wind's blowing in your face and the sun is shining, and like an ocean you start to see trees, and you get closer, and as far as you can look to the right, trees. As far as you can look forward, trees. And as far as you can look to the left, never-ending trees. I imagine that's what it would be like the first time gazing upon Davokar. So let's talk about what the desire is to want to get into Davokar as far as characters are concerned, and why it's such a driving force, especially to humans, a driving force of needing to get in there and take. Let's go back to my ocean analogy. Let's say we're capable of drinking salt water. Let's just say, either that or the ocean isn't salt. It's just regular plain fresh water. And we don't have any drinking water where we're at. and then we stumble across the ocean. There's so much water. What would be the big deal if I went and got a couple of buckets of water and put it back in a holding pen back where I was living? And every couple of days, I would just go and get a couple of buckets of water. That, for the most part, is how it starts. So you're not taking too much. Your couple of buckets of water really aren't going to have the impact on the ocean that that anybody's going to notice. You're not really going to affect the fish or the ocean life. And for all intents and purposes, you're in the realm with what a normal animal would use anyways, just a couple of buckets. Well, humans, we're not going to be satisfied with a couple of buckets. And it won't be before too long before we want more than just a couple of buckets. We'll start to expand, probably do some type of pumping, probably do some type of irrigation or pipe laying to make our lives easier. And now we're no longer just taking a couple of buckets. We're now taking a couple of 100 gallons. And it just doesn't stop from there. And that is what I imagine. This is what I imagine. Like when I play my characters, when I have these guys on a board, there's so much. This forest is so gigantic that to the humans, it's incomprehensible that they could ever tap out this resource. That these ancient timbers and the heavy, undergrowth is just full of stuff that they need for their civilization. And it's ludicrous to think that they could abuse that just by the sheer size of this forest. You could walk for days in any direction in that forest, chopping down every single tree, and you wouldn't even notice it. Just like, how many buckets of water could you take from the ocean and make an impact? Right? That's ridiculous. And that's how I see the characters, the humans, making an impact. It's ludicrous. But on the flip side, the elves, which are the inhabitants of Dabokar. Spoiler warning, moving forward. You're about to get some privileged information, so if you are a player character, be prepared to hear some stuff maybe you shouldn't. The elves are timeless. And they're quite aware what humans are capable of. And even though to human eyes meaning eyeballs of a human, this forest would never, ever be threatened. To the elves, every single human is a threat to that entire forest. Every single one. So whether a ranger that is very keen or a druid that would be very keen on taking care of nature goes in, only takes dead wood laying on the ground to make a fire. They're not cutting anything down. They're just taking the undergrowth that is going to rot away. They take it to build a fire. The elves take it as, you've just denied the forest nutrients. You've just denied the insects a home. You've just denied the fungus or the algae or the mushrooms. You get the point. You've denied them a safe place to plant. You've denied the birds and the squirrels safe refuge from predators. So, in the elves' eyes, it is unacceptable at any level of the human intrusion. Dabokar also has a secret. Please, if you're a character player, please at this time do not listen to what I'm about to say. If you're just a hobbyist or a dungeon master, feel free to stick around. But again, if you're a player character, I'm about to reveal some hot and heavy stuff, so I highly suggest you bail out now. Go on and skip to episode 2. You've been warned. So, the forest is hiding a secret. It looks ancient, but it's really not that old. It's actually was created by the elves. They sung a song and created Davokar to hide an ancient civilization of super powerful humans with advanced technology and a advanced view of the world that went sideways. And this ancient human society unleashed all sorts of evil onto the planet or into the area. And the elves had to weave their wild magic and entice nature to help them to tide this evil back. Davokar is a scab on a festering wound. And as long as that scab stays covered up, or that wound stays covered up with that scab, the wound can't ooze its infection. But the infection's never going away. And in fact, some say despite the scab, the infection grows. And these new humans, the Ambrians, which we'll get into, they either don't believe it, they don't understand it, they aren't being told about it, fear of possibly, oh, it won't happen to us maybe. Serious lack of communication. So that's the whole thing. The humans cannot be allowed to get into Davokar and pull that scab back. Davokar was designed to bottle up the evil. And sometimes it bubbles out just by natural processes. And when it bubbles out, it infests the creatures of the forest. And they become known as abominations. Abominations are complete corruptions, I would possibly say on the demonic level. Think of an aberration possibly like of a great cosmic horror, and that's what will manifest from the evil that comes out. And so at that point, it attacks anything living. It wants to devour all living things. Elves, trolls, humans, anything that's of normal, natural existence. It wants to devour it with a rage and a violence that's just incomprehensible. Don't ask me to spell that. So that's what's at stake. So there's a suggestion that there are two types of areas in Davokar. You have light Davokar, as in sunlight, and then you have dark Davokar, which is no sunlight. Now, it's up to the DM's discretion how far light Davokar is. If let's do the small size. Let's make Davokar small. Let's make it only the size of Alaska. Let's make it that size, right? Hundreds of thousands of acres. Millions of acres, let's put it that way. how far into Alaska from the perimeter can somebody go and still be in light Davokar? And light Davokar simply means this is the part of the forest that is least likely to have contamination, to have corruption, to have abominations. Now you have to remember that the corruption and abomination want to devour light Davokar. It's just part of their being to destroy it. So I don't know the circumference of Alaska. I don't know how wide it is or what have you. But I would assume you can go a couple of hundreds of miles and still be considered to be in light Davokar. Dark Davokar, on the other hand, um, a rustling of the leaves, and you're pulling back the scab to reveal the evil and vileness that lays beneath. It could be just you kill a bird, to have dinner that night, and you run out of rations, and you have to drop a fowl. So you drop a bird, and before you could even pull your spear or your sling bullet or your arrow from the bird, as it's on its way down from the branch to the ground, worms, almost something maybe from the movie It, or The Thing, I'm sorry, The Thing, when tentacles start crawling out of it, and claws and fangs, and this abomination just openly attacks you. That's the realm of dark Davokar. In the meantime, you could find a beautiful fox running through dark Davokar, and it's completely untouched by the corruption. How does this all play in the realm of the game, in the rules? So I want you to think what people are willing to do to this day to achieve success, what they're willing to do to their bodies. If you can think about your top athletes and what they're willing to put in their bodies to be a little more competitive, to be a little faster, to have better muscle tone, to win that type of... You see where I'm going with that, right? There are some guys that'll just do all over the... off the shelf type stuff to get better muscles, to stay in shape a little better. And then you have all the way to the guys that are willing to inject, horse hormones every day to get as fast and as big as they can. And those have repercussions on your body. They're all going to have repercussions. You sit there and you pound high processed supplements. It's going to have a toll on your liver, because your liver is not designed to deal with highly processed supplements. Now, it may be cramps, it may be gas, it may be, a little bit of pain, a little bit of indigestion, maybe it rots out your gallbladder. Nothing really life-threatening in the beginning, but it's going to have a toll versus the guy that's injecting the horse tranquilizer or horse hormones, in their thigh every 26 hours so they could look like, the Incredible Hulk. And that's going to have a much larger devastation to your system. But in the meantime, look at the gains. Who's making gains? Who's getting the accolades? Who's getting what they want the most? So that's how you figure why people would go into Dark Davokar. That's where the good stuff's at. What is the good stuff? Well, it's whatever you need it to be. Is it magic? Is it treasure? Is it knowledge? Is it power? If that's what you're seeking, the deeper you go into Dark Davokar, the better stuff you'll find. On the Light Davokar, less impact on the system, but you're not going to find the juicy stuff. Or the juicy stuff may be broken into 100 pieces. So those 100 individual pieces, before they become something tangible and powerful, spread out throughout all of the perimeter of Alaska, it has no effect really. It's minuscule. So those are your trade-offs. Those are your trade-offs between uh, characters' objectives. Why would they go into a forest and risk themselves? Again, why do we go into dungeons? There's no reason to go in that dungeon. Yes, there is. Fame, booty, and experience points. It's the same reason we're going into Davokar. So, you pretty much heard me only mention, the humans and the elves, and it would seem like it's you know, uh, an A versus B. Well, that's not the case. The Davokar is loaded with other sentient beings. I'm not going to go through them here. Pretty much this is episode 1. But I can tell you that there is a vast array of sentient beings, meaning intelligent, with spoken language, with laws and customs and religions and civilizations that fill Davokar. But again, if we're talking about humans, humans are relatively new to the area. There are some already existing humans, as I mentioned before. They're going to be the barbarians. But the barbarians don't do the Dark Davokar. They just don't. They're going to only be found in Light Davokar, and the desire for um, power and ambition worthy of going into Dark Davokar, I believe those barbarians have either been killed off or turned into abominations, or maybe they learned their lessons and they understand it's just not worth it. So just know that there is plenty. It's not just humans and elves. There are plenty other races and sentient beings that are in the dark, or that are in the Davokar. And yeah, it's quite a menagerie. There's magnificent beasts, stuff that's going to blow your mind. Um, just it's absolutely fantastic. So I mean, if you know it was created from Sweden, so if you want to think that's how the forest looks, lots of evergreens, lots of alpine type setting, that would be a fair assessment. But it's your forest. You can make it however you want. If you want to make it, have jungle, you can do that. If you wanted to have swamp, I think a swamp would be a great idea. Um, Cold temperatures, hot temperatures, you can make it whatever you want. And that's what's great about it. So when I think of the Davokar, I definitely have that Nordic feel, but not so much as like on the Arctic Rim, you know, maybe like a Norway or that. I don't really think of the Davokar as that. I have more of an American, something maybe in the Smokies, that type of dense forest like that, where the tree line is, or the trees, their lowest branches are higher, so it's more navigable. That's what I see in my mind's eye. That doesn't mean I haven't been all over the internet to find some really cool, forest pictures, but that's when I play it in my mind's eye. That's what I see. So I think I'm going to wrap it up here. Speaking about Davokar, just know that there's no hard and heavy rules. It's all based on interpretation. But just know the reason it's there. The elves created it, and the elves created it to stymie the evil that was unleashed because of a previous human civilization, super advanced, and they lost control. And this is what the elves came up with as a solution to stymie the evil and to make sure that it stays hidden. All right. Thanks for your time.